I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from." Morning light filtered through the kitchen curtains as Barbara Wilson sipped her tea, staring at the small list she'd written on a torn piece of notepad paper. Bread, soap, bank. She read the word bank twice. The letters seemed heavy somehow. She felt a slow ache in her chest, the kind that comes when you know something is wrong but hope, just for a moment, that it isn't. The house was quiet, too quiet for a place that had once bustled with the sounds of her husband Robert's jazz records and the creaking of his favorite rocking chair. 5 years had passed since his death, but the silence still felt new some mornings. Barbara ran her finger along the rim of her teacup, the familiar porcelain worn smooth from years of morning rituals. The sound of tires on gravel broke her thoughts. She knew that sound Joshua's SUV, always arriving a little too fast, stopping a little too suddenly. Her son never could master the art of patience. Even at 44, she straightened her cardigan and tucked the list into her pocket. "Ready, Mom?" Joshua called out as he walked in without knocking. His voice was soft, kind on the surface. His eyes were not. They moved over the counters, the keys, the mail, taking inventory. Behind him, Amanda followed with a leather folder pressed tightly against her side. "We'll get you all set up," Amanda said, her smile too wide, too rehearsed. "Less stress. One signature and done." Barbara folded her list carefully. "Let me get my sweater," she said. Standing slowly, in her bedroom, she opened the small wooden jewelry box Robert had given her on their 30th anniversary. Inside was her late husband's tie pin, a simple silver bar with a tiny dot in the center where a gem should be. Beneath it, a thin wire. The pin was a recorder. She had bought it after nights of worry and one quiet meeting at the bank with a manager who listened. She pinned it carefully to her collar, hands steady despite her racing heart. She checked her purse wallet, ID, and a plain envelope with 4 words written on a card inside. She took a long breath, squaring her shoulders before walking back to the living room. Joshua grabbed her house keys before she could. "I'll drive," he said, holding the door open but not stepping aside. Amanda smiled. "We'll be back before lunch," she said to no one in particular. In the car, the air smelled of a strong cologne that barely covered the stale odor of fast food. The radio played low some talk show Barbara didn't recognize. Joshua chatted about the weather, about a sale at the hardware store, about how banks make things too complicated for older people. "We're just helping, Mom," he said, eyes fixed on the road. "You taught me to take care of family." The words stung. When Joshua was 9, he'd saved every penny from his paper route to buy Robert a birthday gift, a fishing lure that cost nearly $15. "Family takes care of family," he'd said then, his eyes bright with pride. The memory broke her heart a little. Where had that boy gone? Barbara watched the road silently. The oak trees along Maple Street bent in the autumn wind, shedding golden leaves. She'd walked this road countless times, pushing Joshua in a stroller, later watching him ride his bicycle with training wheels, later still waving goodbye as he drove off to college. Now she was the passenger, and the familiar route felt strangely foreign. At a red light, Amanda flipped the folder open and angled it toward Barbara. Lines of dense print covered the pages. "These are the forms," she said briskly. "They put everything under one roof. So simple." She tapped a page. "Initial here. It just means they can talk to me if the bank needs anything." Barbara looked in the spot Amanda indicated. Above it, she saw the words "Power of Attorney" in bold letters. She did not point to them. She did not argue. She simply closed the folder with one finger and handed it back. "I'll read at the bank," she said quietly. Joshua's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "It's all standard. Mom, we went over this." Barbara looked out the window. They hadn't gone over anything. 3 weeks ago, Joshua had mentioned simplifying her finances. 2 weeks ago, Amanda had asked for her Social Security number to update some forms. 1 week ago, her bank statement had arrived opened, though she never saw it delivered. Small things. Tiny shadows spreading across her life. The River Street branch sat on a corner of Main Street, its glass windows reflecting the morning sun. Bright signs advertised checking accounts and home loans. A row of potted chrysanthemums lined the entrance, seasonal and cheerful. People entered and exited with the blank faces of those conducting routine business. Joshua parked close to the entrance. He rushed around to open Barbara's door before she could reach for the handle. "Careful," he said, as if she might shatter on contact with the pavement. She stepped onto the curb and stood tall, despite her stiff knees. 72 wasn't ancient, despite what Joshua seemed to think. Inside, the air was cool. The faint smell of coffee drifted from somewhere behind the teller counter. The line was short, just 2 people waiting on a Tuesday morning. A young woman with a nameplate reading Tanya Jefferson looked up and smiled at Barbara. The smile faltered for a moment when she noticed the bruise on Barbara's forearm, a souvenir from Amanda's helpful grip when guiding her down the stairs yesterday. Then Tanya's expression smoothed back into professional courtesy. "Good morning," she said, her eyes lingering on Barbara's face a moment longer than necessary. Joshua guided Barbara toward a small seating area, pressing a pen into her hand. "Let me fill the forms. You just sign," he said, his voice low. He laid the folder on the table and lowered his face to whisper. "No need to make a scene. Mom, it's routine." Amanda sat close on Barbara's other side. Too close. Her perfume was sharp and sweet, like overripe fruit. She set one hand on Barbara's elbow. Not a gentle touch, a warning touch. Barbara kept her eyes on the far wall and counted in her mind. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Counting steadied her nerves. It was something Robert had taught her during his hospital stays. Count to 5, then decide if you're still afraid. "Let's see a banker," Joshua called toward the reception desk. "We have paperwork." His tone had weight now. He wanted speed. He wanted a room without windows. He wanted to be finished before anyone looked too closely. A door clicked open, and a woman in a navy blazer stepped out. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and she wore a badge that read, "Olivia Morgan, branch manager." She recognized Barbara with the quiet look of someone who doesn't forget faces. She also seemed to notice Joshua's grip on the pen, Amanda's hand placement, and the way Barbara's shoulder stayed unnaturally still. "Good morning," Olivia said, her voice calm and warm. "What can we help you with today, Mrs. Wilson?" Barbara lifted her chin slightly. "Paperwork," she said. Her voice did not shake. "Perfect," Olivia replied. "Let me find an open office so we can be comfortable." She turned toward the teller line and gave a small nod that meant nothing to most people, but everything to trained staff. Tanya's hand moved to a phone. Joshua gathered the papers hurriedly. "We don't need, it's no trouble," Olivia interrupted, still gentle. "We like to review documents in private so we can answer any questions." She led the way, unhurried. The carpet muffled their footsteps. The office she chose had a glass wall facing the lobby and a door that closed with a soft click. Inside were 2 chairs and a small table. A white noise machine hummed discreetly in the corner. A small security camera blinked slowly near the ceiling. Barbara took the chair where she could see both the door and the hallway beyond. Joshua sat across from her, one knee bouncing rapidly. Amanda pressed in at Barbara's side, opening the folder again, finger pointing impatiently. "Here," she said. "Initials go fast when you don't overthink." Olivia took a seat at the edge of the table. She did not reach for the pen. "Before we begin, I'll make copies of your IDs and scan these forms so our system has them on file," she said evenly. "Mrs. Wilson, may I have your ID?" Barbara opened her purse. ID, wallet, the plain envelope. Her hand found each item by feel. She placed her ID on the table. She placed a deposit slip from her wallet on top of it as if by habit, and she touched the envelope but did not take it out yet. Not yet. Her heart pounded hard against her ribs. Joshua slid the pen closer. His smile looked strained now. "Sign, Mom," he said softly, though his jaw was tight. "We need to be somewhere after this." Amanda's fingers tightened on Barbara's arm until the skin blanched. "We're doing this for you," she murmured. "Don't make it hard." Barbara turned her head and looked directly at her son. She did not look away. For a moment, the room went quiet in her mind. She saw his first day of school, his small hand waving goodbye. She saw him graduating high school, tall and proud. She saw him on the day of Robert's funeral, holding her elbow just as he did now, guiding. Always guiding. She let the pain of that memory pass through her and not stop her. "I will read first," she said. Simple words, not loud, a line she could stand on. Olivia nodded as if that was the only correct answer. "Of course," Joshua laughed once, short and harsh. "Mom, it's all standard. We talked about this." Barbara set the pen down. She reached again into her purse. Her fingers closed around the envelope. She felt the weight of the small card inside. 4 words. Not a speech, not a fight, a call for help. She drew the envelope out and slid it beneath the deposit slip with a smooth motion. No drama, no pause. "Here are my documents," she said to Olivia. Her eyes met the manager's and held for a second longer than normal. Just long enough to say, "I trust you." Just long enough to say, "Please see me." The white noise machine hummed. The camera blinked. Outside the glass wall, Tanya looked over from the counter with the same calm face and the same watchful eyes. Barbara breathed in. The pen lay silent on the table. Its tip pointed away from her. The clock on the wall ticked once. The day kept moving, but Barbara had planted her feet. The visit might be called routine, but nothing about this moment was small. It was the line between who decides and who obeys. It was the space where a quiet woman chose not to be pushed. 2 months earlier, Barbara had noticed the first signs. Small things, barely worth mentioning, yet together they formed a pattern she couldn't ignore. It started with her mail. Bills would arrive opened. "Just checking for you, Mom," Joshua would say. Bank statements disappeared entirely. "Probably lost in delivery," Amanda suggested, her tone dismissive. Then came the question, seemingly innocent but increasingly probing. "Where do you keep your important papers?" Joshua had asked one Sunday afternoon while helping her replace a light bulb. "Dad's life insurance policy. The house deed, you know. The essentials. In my filing cabinet," she'd answered, not thinking much of it. The next day, she found the cabinet slightly ajar, though she always kept it locked. The sudden attention was jarring. For nearly 3 years after Robert's death, Joshua had visited sporadically Christmas, her birthday, the occasional Sunday dinner. Michael, her older son, called weekly from Colorado but rarely visited. Barbara had grown accustomed to her independence, to the quiet routine of widowhood. Then Joshua had lost his job at the investment firm. "Downsizing," he'd said, though the tightness around his eyes suggested otherwise. Amanda's real estate business was experiencing a temporary slump. Suddenly, they were visiting twice a week, bringing groceries she hadn't asked for, offering to take her to appointments she hadn't made. One evening in August, Barbara had accidentally overheard them arguing in the driveway as she watered her roses. "We need to move faster," Amanda had hissed. "The second notice came yesterday. 60 days. Joshua, I know, but we can't just ask her for the money. She'd want to know why." "Then don't ask. The power of attorney would solve everything. One signature and we access all of it. She's not senile. She'd never sign it without reading every line. Then make her think it's something else. God, Joshua, do I have to think of everything we're talking about losing the house? Your mother has nearly $300,000 sitting in accounts doing nothing." Barbara had stepped back. Water dripping from the forgotten watering can. 300,000 Robert's life insurance and their modest savings. Money she'd planned to leave for both her sons. Money for her care if she became ill. Not a fortune, but security. That night, she couldn't sleep. The conversation played on repeat in her mind. She'd always known Amanda was ambitious, materialistic even. But this was different. This was calculated. The next day, she'd visited her bank alone and asked to speak with the manager. Olivia Morgan had listened carefully, without judgment, as Barbara explained her concerns. "Unfortunately, what you're describing happens more often than people realize," Olivia had said. "Financial exploitation of seniors is one of the fastest growing forms of elder abuse. I don't want to believe my own son would." Barbara couldn't finish the sentence. "Love and desperation can make good people do terrible things," Olivia said gently. "Let's focus on protecting you, regardless of their intentions." Together, they had developed a plan. First, Barbara established a trust with Michael as co-trustee, transferring most of her assets into it. Second, they flagged her accounts for unusual activity. Third, they created a code word and a protocol if Barbara ever felt pressured. If you come in with family members and feel unsafe, slip us a note with the word help on it. Olivia had instructed. We'll handle the rest. When Barbara had left the bank that day, she felt both relieved and heartbroken. The safety measures were comforting, but the need for them was devastating. 2 days later, she had called Michael for the first time in years with something more substantial than small talk. "Mom? Everything okay?" Michael had asked, concern evident in his voice. At 46, he sounded so much like Robert, it sometimes hurt to hear him. "I need to talk to you about something important," she'd said. "It's about Joshua and Amanda." The conversation had been difficult. Michael was skeptical at first, defending his younger brother's intentions, but as Barbara detailed the pattern of behavior, the mail, the probing questions, the overhead conversation, his tone had shifted. "I'll be there next week," he'd promised. "We'll figure this out together." Michael had arrived as promised, staying at a hotel rather than at Barbara's house to avoid alerting Joshua. Together, they had visited Marcus Rivera, an attorney specializing in elder law. "A revocable living trust is your best protection," Marcus had explained. "You remain the primary trustee, with Michael as co-trustee. Your assets transfer into the trust, which means even if someone obtained power of attorney over you personally, they couldn't touch what's in the trust." "And Joshua won't know?" Barbara had asked. "Not unless you tell him. The trust isn't public record." The paperwork had been completed within days. Barbara's house, savings accounts, and investments were now legally protected. Michael had returned to Colorado with copies of all documents and a promise to check in daily. "I should stay," he'd insisted. "No," Barbara had said firmly. "If Joshua suspects anything, it could make things worse. I have a plan." The plan involved Eleanor Patterson, Barbara's closest friend and a retired attorney herself. Eleanor would check in daily, and Barbara would wear the recording device whenever Joshua and Amanda visited. They had purchased the tie-pin recorder together, practicing with it until Barbara could activate it without looking. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Eleanor had asked. "Gathering evidence against your own son." Barbara had stared out the window, watching fallen leaves skitter across her driveway. "I don't want to believe he would do this. But if he is, I need to know. And I need proof." Now, sitting in the bank office with Joshua and Amanda hovering impatiently, Barbara felt the weight of those weeks of preparation. The recorder pinned to her collar was capturing everything: Joshua's tense instructions, Amanda's tight grip, their rushed attempts to get her signature without letting her read the documents. What had happened to her son, the boy who had once saved his allowance to buy medicine for a stray cat, who had cried when Robert taught him that fishing meant killing the fish? Had financial pressure changed him so fundamentally, or had this capacity for deception always been there? Waiting for the right circumstances, the answers didn't matter now. What mattered was protecting herself, not just her assets, but her dignity, her autonomy. Robert had always told her, "Stand your ground. Barb, quiet doesn't mean weak." Today, she would honor those words. The week after establishing the trust, Barbara had thrown herself into preparation. The stakes were too high for half measures. "We need to think like attorneys," Eleanor had said during one of their planning sessions. They sat at Barbara's kitchen table, legal pads between them, the afternoon light casting long shadows across the floor. "Document everything, times, dates, exact words." Barbara had nodded, writing each instruction carefully. Eleanor, with her silver bob and penetrating blue eyes, had practiced law for 40 years before retiring. She approached Barbara's situation with the methodical precision that had made her formidable in the courtroom. "Keep a journal," Eleanor continued. "Write down every interaction with Joshua and Amanda. Note if they take mail, ask about finances, or try to isolate you from friends or other family. They've been scheduling doctor's appointments I didn't request," Barbara said quietly. Last week, Joshua mentioned something about cognitive testing the doctor supposedly recommended. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "Classic move," They're building a narrative that you're mentally declining. Have you seen this doctor yourself? Without them? No, they always insist on coming in with me. Make your own appointment. Get a cognitive assessment on your own terms, with results sent only to you. We need to establish your competency independently. That afternoon, Barbara had called her longtime physician, Dr. Harriet Chen, and scheduled a private appointment. 2 days later, she underwent a comprehensive cognitive assessment. Your results are excellent, Barbara. Dr. Chen had said afterward, your memory and decision-making abilities are well above average for your age group. I've documented this thoroughly in your file. Could you provide a signed letter stating that Barbara had asked, for my personal records. Dr. Chen had given her a curious look, but complied without questions. The letter now sat in the safe deposit box Michael had helped her open at a different bank, a bank Joshua didn't know about. Next came the security measures. Michael had installed a small camera doorbell before returning to Colorado. It stores footage in the cloud, he'd explained. If anyone comes or goes, we'll have a record. Eleanor had helped her catalog valuables and important documents, photographing each item and creating a secure inventory. They'd moved certain sentimental items, Robert's watch, her grandmother's pearl necklace, photo albums to Eleanor's house for safekeeping. Not that we don't trust Joshua, Eleanor had said delicately. But we don't. Barbara had finished, the admission painful but necessary. The most difficult preparation had been emotional. Each night, Barbara found herself staring at family photographs, Joshua's graduation, his wedding to Amanda, holidays when everyone had seemed happy. Had she missed signs? Had she somehow failed as a mother to instill proper values? The questions haunted her. Stop blaming yourself, Michael had told her during one of their daily calls. This isn't about your parenting. It's about choices Joshua is making as an adult. But why would he do this? We've always been close, Michael had sighed. Money changes people. Mom, and from what you've told me, Amanda has expensive tastes. Their house is twice what they can afford. Her car payments alone would cover your monthly expenses. The truth was, Barbara had never fully understood Joshua's relationship with Amanda. They'd met when Joshua was still struggling to find his footing after college, working temporary jobs and sharing an apartment with friends. Amanda, already successful in real estate, had seemed to offer stability and direction. Within a year of their marriage, Joshua had abandoned his plans to teach history, instead taking a commission-based position at an investment firm Amanda's cousin owned. Their lifestyle immediately escalated: a house in an exclusive neighborhood, luxury cars, expensive vacations. Barbara had worried silently but never interfered. Now, she wondered if Joshua had been living beyond his means all along, accumulating debt behind the facade of success. The thought that he might see her as nothing more than a financial solution made her physically ill. 3 days before this bank visit, Barbara had received an unexpected call from Tanya Jefferson, the teller at River Street branch. Mrs. Wilson, this is Tanya from your bank. I'm calling about a transaction request we received today. Barbara's heart had raced. What transaction? I haven't requested anything. Someone attempted to transfer $5,000 from your savings account to an external account. They had your account information and social security number, but our system flagged it because it didn't match your usual patterns. Ice had flooded Barbara's veins. I didn't authorize any transfer. That's what we suspected. We've blocked the transaction and placed a security alert on your accounts. No transfers will be processed without in-person verification with ID. After hanging up, Barbara had called Olivia Morgan immediately, her hands shaking so badly she could barely dial. They tried to access my money already, she'd said when Olivia answered. We caught it, Olivia had reassured her. The system worked, but this confirms your concerns weren't unfounded. Are you still coming in on Tuesday with them? Yes, they don't know the transfer was blocked. They're still pushing me to sign the power of attorney. Then we'll be ready. The moment you give us the signal, we'll activate our elder financial abuse protocol. That night, Barbara had sat alone in her garden as twilight settled over the neighborhood. The roses Robert had planted were still blooming, their fragrance sweet in the cooling air. She'd watched a family walk by, parents holding the hands of a toddler learning to navigate the sidewalk. The simple scene had brought tears to her eyes. Family should be protection, not threat. Love should lift up, not exploit. The next day, Joshua had called, his voice unusually cheerful. Everything's set for Tuesday. Mom, the bank appointment at 10, then lunch at that cafe you like. What exactly are we doing at the bank? She'd asked, pretending ignorance. Just updating your accounts, like we discussed, making things simpler. You won't have to worry about bills or banking anymore. She'd made a non-committal sound, and he'd quickly changed the subject. That evening, she'd finalized her preparations. She'd charged the tie pin recorder and tested it one last time with Eleanor. She'd written the simple note, "Help under duress," and sealed it in a plain envelope. She'd laid out her clothes for the next day, choosing a blouse with a collar that would conceal the recorder. As she'd prepared for bed, her phone had chimed with a text from Michael. "Everything okay for tomorrow?" "All set," she'd replied. "Eleanor knows the plan. Olivia is expecting us. I can still fly out tonight," he'd offered. "No, better if you're not here yet. They'll be suspicious if they see you. Call me the second it's done. I'll be on the next flight." Barbara had slept fitfully, waking several times from dreams where she was lost in her own house, unable to find the doors. By morning, she felt calm in a strange, detached way. The time for doubt and grief had passed. Now was the time for action. At breakfast, she'd made a small list bread, soap, bank, and placed it on the kitchen table where Joshua would see it when he arrived. Normal, routine items. Nothing to suggest this day would be anything but ordinary. Now, sitting in Olivia Morgan's office with the pen lying untouched before her, Barbara felt an odd sense of clarity. The path ahead was difficult but necessary. This wasn't just about money, it was about truth, about boundaries, about refusing to become invisible simply because she had grown older. Olivia picked up the stack of documents with steady hands. "I'll make copies," she said. Her tone was light, as if this were all perfectly normal. She slid Barbara's ID and the deposit slip into a clear sleeve. The plain envelope lay between them. Olivia did not look at it yet. She stood, smiled once at the group, and walked to the copier outside the office. The hallway was short. The copier hummed. Olivia lifted the sleeve and let the envelope fall into her palm. She opened it under the lid. Quick and neat. Barbara watched through the glass as Olivia read the 4 words. She saw the subtle straightening of the manager's shoulders, the momentary pause before she closed the envelope and returned it to the sleeve. She pressed the green button. Paper slid out. She took 1 copy for the file and 1 for her pocket. On her way back, Olivia stopped at the teller line for half a second. "Water for the office, please," she told Tanya. It sounded like a small request. Tanya heard more in it. She reached for paper cups and with her other hand pressed a button under the counter that silently alerted security. Near the entrance, a security officer lifted his eyes. He did not move quickly. He moved like someone who had done this before and would do it right. Barbara felt her pulse quicken. The plan was in motion. Now, she needed to stay calm and follow through. Her entire future depended on what happened in the next few minutes. Joshua had first mentioned the power of attorney 3 weeks ago. It had been a Sunday afternoon, the kind of perfect autumn day that seemed designed for family gatherings and good memories. Instead, it had marked the beginning of the most difficult period of Barbara's life since Robert's death. They had been sitting on her back porch, watching leaves spiral down from the massive oak tree that dominated the yard. Joshua had brought takeout Chinese food, her favorite, and seemed unusually attentive, refilling her tea without being asked, laughing at her mild jokes. "Mom," he'd said during a lull in the conversation, "I've been thinking about how to make things easier for you." Barbara had smiled. "I'm managing just fine." "Of course you are," he'd said quickly. "But there's no reason you should have to deal with all the paperwork and bills on your own. Amanda and I could help." "That's thoughtful, but I like keeping track of my own affairs. Keeps my mind sharp." Joshua had leaned forward, his expression earnest. "What if something happened? Though what if you got sick or had an accident? Who would handle things?" The question wasn't unreasonable. Barbara had considered these matters herself after Robert died. "Michael and I have discussed this. He has copies of my important documents." A flash of something annoyance resentment had crossed Joshua's face before his smile returned. Michael lives across the country. I'm right here. Wouldn't it make more sense for me to have legal authority to help if needed? Legal authority. Just a simple power of attorney, nothing dramatic. It would let me pay bills, deal with insurance, handle banking if you ever couldn't. Barbara had taken a slow sip of tea, buying time to think. That seems premature. I'm in good health. It's not about now, Joshua had insisted. It's about being prepared. Remember how complicated things were when Dad died, all those forms and decisions while you were grieving. The mention of Robert had been calculated. She realized now, a deliberate appeal to emotion, to vulnerability. I'll think about it, she'd said finally, wanting to end the conversation. Joshua had nodded, apparently satisfied with this small victory. But the next day, he'd arrived with a folder of printed documents already prepared, already waiting for her signature. When she'd said she wanted her own attorney to review them first, his pleasant demeanor had cracked. Don't you trust me? He'd demanded, voice rising. I'm trying to help you, not rob you. I never suggested you didn't have to. It's obvious what you're thinking. The outburst had been so sudden, so unlike the son she thought she knew, that Barbara had been momentarily speechless. Joshua had immediately apologized, blaming stress at work, but the mask had slipped. In that moment, she'd seen the desperation driving him. Over the following days, the pressure had mounted. Daily calls, unannounced visits, Amanda joining the campaign with her own brand of subtle manipulation. Joshua worries about you constantly, she'd said during one visit, her voice honey-sweet with concern. He barely sleeps, thinking about you alone in this big house. Signing those papers would give him peace of mind. When gentle persuasion failed, they'd tried creating dependency. Joshua had accidentally taken her car keys one evening. I'll drive you wherever you need to go, he'd offered. Another day. Amanda had reorganized Barbara's medication, making the system so complicated that Barbara had needed help sorting them. The previous week, things had escalated further. Barbara had declined to attend a dinner where they'd planned to discuss the paperwork, and Joshua had lost his temper completely. You're being selfish and stubborn, he'd shouted, pacing her living room. All we're asking is for you to sign a simple document that protects everyone. Protects everyone, or gives you control of my finances, Barbara had asked quietly. Joshua had frozen, his face flushing dark red. Is that what you think this is about, money? Isn't it? He'd laughed, a harsh sound without humor. You have no idea what Amanda and I have done for you. The time we've spent, the sacrifices we've made to check on you, to make sure you're okay. I never asked you to do those things. No, because you'd rather sit here alone in your stubbornness until something happens. Then Michael can swoop in from Colorado and play the hero while I've been doing the actual work of caring for you. The outburst had revealed more than Joshua intended the resentment toward Michael. The view of Barbara as a burden rather than a person. The framing of basic family connection as sacrifice. After he'd stormed out, Barbara had activated the recorder and spoken into it, documenting the confrontation while it was fresh. She'd sent the recording to Michael and Eleanor that same night. This is escalating, Michael had texted back. I'm worried about your safety. I'm careful, she'd replied. Tuesday is the bank appointment. After that, it will be over, one way or another. Now, sitting in Olivia's office with Joshua growing visibly agitated beside her, Barbara realized she had reached the culmination of weeks of mounting tension. There would be no more delays, no more excuses. Today, the truth would come out. Olivia returned from the copier and set a cup of water in front of Barbara. Here you go. She placed the copied documents on the table and smiled at Joshua and Amanda. Thank you for your patience. Joshua leaned forward. Great. So we can sign now? In a moment, Olivia said. She turned the white noise machine up one notch and placed a small recorder on the table. We record all document reviews for accuracy. It protects everyone. Do I have your consent to record? Amanda's mouth twitched. Is that really necessary? It's our standard procedure, Olivia replied calmly. She pressed the red button. The light glowed. Joshua tapped the folder impatiently. We just need to consolidate her accounts and set me as the point person. I already explained everything to Mom. Olivia nodded. I'll ask Mrs. Wilson a few questions in her own words. Then we'll go through the documents line by line. She turned to Barbara with warm, direct eyes. Mrs. Wilson, can you tell me what these forms will do? Barbara touched the edge of the table, steadying herself. Her voice was even when she spoke. They will give my son control over my money and my house. She did not look at Joshua, whose posture had stiffened visibly. That's not Mom. You're making it sound... Olivia held up a hand, polite but firm. I'll come to you in a moment. She opened the folder. Who prepared these documents? A mobile notary did. Amanda answered quickly. It's all standard. Olivia examined the stamp on the first page, her eyes passing over the spacing and the seal. Barbara noticed the slight narrowing of her eyes. Something was wrong with the documents, though Olivia gave no other reaction. And do you have your own attorney, Mrs. Wilson? No, Barbara said softly. Joshua smiled as if he were being helpful. She doesn't need one. It's routine. Understood, Olivia said. She stood again, took 2 steps to the glass wall, and looked out as if checking the lobby. Tanya met her eyes and gave a small nod. Near the entrance, the security officer turned a key in the top latch that controlled the front door. It clicked softly. Customers could leave, but no one new would enter. The branch went a shade quieter, like a room holding its breath. Olivia returned to her seat and folded her hands. Before we continue, I need to verify the power of attorney with the notary office and with our legal team. That will take a few minutes. She smiled toward the lobby. In the meantime, I'd like to confirm some account details with Mrs. Wilson in private. It's part of our Know Your Customer rules. Would you mind waiting in the lobby? I'll call you right back in. Joshua blinked, then laughed as if it were a joke. She's hard of hearing. I'll help. Olivia's tone remained pleasant but firm. For KYC verification, I must speak to the account holder alone. It's regulatory compliance. She glanced at the security officer, who took 1 step closer to the door. It won't be long. Amanda's fingers tightened on Barbara's arm, then released. Fine, she said, voice artificially bright. We'll be right outside. Joshua stood slowly, keeping his eyes on Barbara as if he could make her submit through sheer intensity. He placed both hands on the back of the chair and bent down close to her ear. Don't make this messy, he said under his breath. We have plans today. The recorder on the table and the pin on Barbara's collar caught every word. Barbara kept her gaze on Olivia. She did not blink. The door closed. The white noise machine hummed. The room felt larger without Joshua and Amanda in it. Olivia waited a moment, as if letting the air settle. She leaned forward, elbows on the table, voice low and kind. Barbara, she said, using her first name. I read your note. Barbara's face softened for a second, then composed itself again. Thank you, she whispered. I'm going to ask you 3 questions, Olivia said. You can answer yes or no, or tell me more. 1. Are you being pressured to sign documents you don't want to sign? Yes. 2. Do you understand that these forms would give Joshua control to move your money and sell your home without your permission? Yes. 3. Do you feel safe at home with Joshua and Amanda visiting you? Barbara stared at her hands. Her thumbnail had a pale ridge at the edge from stress. No, she said. Thank you, Olivia said. She did not rush. We will help. I'm calling our legal team now. I will also call the police for a welfare check and adult protective services, which is required when we see signs of elder financial abuse. She paused. Do you want us to contact someone you trust? A friend or family member who isn't here? My older son, Michael, Barbara said. And my friend Eleanor Patterson. Do you have their numbers? Barbara nodded. She pulled a small notebook from her purse and turned to a page where the numbers were written in careful block print. Olivia copied them to a bank form titled Trusted Contact. This is a person we can call if we cannot reach you, or if something seems wrong, she explained. It doesn't give them control. It lets us reach someone who will stand up for you. Barbara nodded. Relief tried to rise in her chest, but transformed into a tight ache. Please call them, she said. I will, Olivia promised. She stood and went to the phone on the credenza. She dialed a direct line to the bank's regional compliance desk. Her words were simple and exact. "This is Olivia Morgan at River Street Branch. I have a senior customer, Mrs. Barbara Wilson, with suspected undue influence by her son and daughter-in-law. Possible forged POA. I am initiating an in-branch hold and requesting law enforcement and APS. We are recording. The front door is on controlled entry." She listened, gave the account number, confirmed the time, thanked them, and hung up. Then she dialed the local police non-emergency line. Her voice remained steady. "We need an officer for a possible elder financial exploitation in progress." Through the glass, Barbara could see Joshua pacing in the lobby. He spoke into his phone, head bent, one hand gesturing sharply. "No, we're still here," he hissed. "She's being slow. It's the manager. Just be ready." "I said be ready." Amanda stood nearby, her eyes flicking between the office door, the security officer, and Joshua. Her posture was rigid, her smile gone. The recorder on Barbara's collar captured it all, every word, every movement, every lie being constructed in real time. Olivia finished her calls and returned to the table. "Barbara," she said, her voice quieter now, "you did everything right. The note, staying calm, the recorder. I'm proud of you." The words were simple but landed like a steadying hand on Barbara's shoulder. She exhaled slowly, a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She lifted the water cup and drank. Her hand trembled slightly, then steadied. "We're going to bring them back in," Olivia explained. "I'll ask some neutral questions while we wait for police. Answer only what you want. I will keep you safe in this room. If at any point you want them removed again, say the word review, and I'll pause and ask them to step out. That will be our signal." Barbara met her eyes. "Review," she repeated softly, testing the shape of the word. It felt like a key. Olivia opened the door. "Thank you for waiting," she said to Joshua and Amanda. "Let's continue. Legal is reviewing the documents now. I have a few standard questions." Joshua strode back in and dropped into the chair like he was reclaiming territory. Amanda sat closer to Barbara than before, her earlier friendly manner replaced by tense vigilance. Through the glass, the security officer remained within sight. Outside, the branch continued its normal operations. Customers deposited checks. A printer hummed. Someone laughed softly near the ATM. Inside the small office, however, the air was charged with unspoken tension. "Who completed the notary?" Olivia asked, pen poised. "Name and contact information, please." "Rick," Joshua said vaguely. "Mobile notary. He was recommended. Fast guy." "Do you have his card?" Olivia asked. Joshua patted his pockets and looked at Amanda. She dug in her purse and pulled out a wrinkled business card with a first name and a phone number typed crookedly. Olivia took it and placed it on the table without comment. "And what is the reason for consolidating today?" "Efficiency," Amanda said quickly. "Barbara gets confused with bills. We just want to help." Barbara looked at the paperwork in front of her. The words seemed to swim for a moment before settling back into focus. She placed her hands flat on the table and kept them there like anchors. Olivia nodded. She wrote stated reason next to Amanda's explanation. Not confirmed. It was a small thing, but it mattered. Her eyes flicked to Barbara, a question there. Barbara shook her head slightly. Outside, the door latch made a soft click as the security officer checked it again. The branch continued its quiet hum of activity. The clock hand moved past 12 and started down the other side. Somewhere in the distance, a siren rose, not loud yet, just a thin line of sound drawing closer through the town streets. Joshua leaned in and lowered his voice. "Can we move this along?" he said. "We have an appointment after this." "We will proceed as soon as legal clears the documents," Olivia replied calmly. She met his gaze directly. "Until then, nothing will be signed." Barbara maintained her slow, even breathing. The recorder pressed cold against her collarbone. The water cup left a ring on the table. She kept the pen beside it, cap still on. She felt the change in the room, even if Joshua didn't recognize it. The visit had shifted. The part where she was led was over. The part where she was heard had begun. The siren grew louder. then faded as a patrol car stopped outside the bank. Through the glass walls of the office, Barbara saw the security officer glance toward the front entrance and give a subtle nod to Olivia. The manager kept her expression neutral, continuing to ask routine questions as if nothing had changed. "Mrs. Wilson, can you confirm your current address for our records?" Olivia asked calmly. 1942 Maple Street, Barbara replied. A soft knock came at the door. Olivia rose and opened it halfway. 2 officers stood in the hallway, a tall African-American man with kind eyes and a petite Asian-American woman with a neat bun and an alert expression. "Thank you for coming," Olivia said in a low voice. "Possible elder financial abuse situation. We're recording in here." The male officer stepped into the office first. "I'm Detective Derek Washington," he said. "This is Officer Sophia Chen. We're going to speak with everyone individually. No one is under arrest at this moment. We just need to understand what's happening here." Joshua leaned back and attempted a casual laugh. "What's happening is a family errand. We don't need police." Detective Washington didn't immediately respond to Joshua. Instead, he turned to Barbara. "Ma'am, are you okay?" Barbara folded her hands in her lap. "I am now," she said, her voice steadier than she expected. Officer Chen's gaze shifted to the pale marks on Barbara's forearm. "How did you get that bruise?" Amanda crossed her legs and immediately answered for Barbara. "She bruises easily. She bumped a chair yesterday." Barbara kept her voice even. "She squeezed me when I didn't want to get in the car." The room fell silent. The recorder light glowed red. The white noise machine hummed. Out in the lobby, customers continued their banking, unaware of the drama unfolding behind the glass wall. Detective Washington nodded once. "We'll separate for statements. Mrs. Wilson, I'll talk with you and Ms. Morgan here. Mr. Wilson, Mrs. Wilson, please step to the waiting area outside. Officer Chen will remain with you." Joshua rose slowly. His jaw tightened visibly. He bent close to Barbara as he passed her chair. "Don't do this," he whispered. "We're family." The recorder at Barbara's collar caught the hiss of his breath, the urgency in his voice. When the door closed, the room seemed to expand with their absence. Detective Washington pulled a chair closer to Barbara and sat. Officer Chen remained near the glass, maintaining a clear view of Joshua and Amanda in the waiting area. "Mrs. Wilson," Washington began, "do you want to be here today?" "No." "Did someone pressure you to sign papers you do not understand?" "Yes." "Who?" "My son Joshua, his wife Amanda." "Have they taken your mail?" "Yes. They collect it before I can. They tell me what to sign. They say I'll be put in a nursing home if I refuse." Olivia listened without interrupting. Detective Washington's voice remained gentle. "Do you feel safe at home when they visit?" "No," Barbara said. Her eyes burned with unshed tears, but she kept her chin level. "Thank you," he said. "I'm going to take a photo of your arm for documentation." He used a small camera, asked permission, and captured a clear image of the bruise. He noted the date and time. "Do you have any evidence of this? Pressure notes, recordings, witnesses?" Barbara touched the tie pin. "This records," she said. "I also gave a note to the bank. The teller saw it. The manager helped." Olivia spoke then. "I activated our in-branch hold protocol. Legal is reviewing a power of attorney they brought. We suspect the notary stamp is fraudulent. We also have video from the lobby. Our policy allows us to share with police upon request." Officer Chen made notes. "Please preserve all footage and audio. We'll request copies." A call light flashed on Olivia's desk. She picked up the phone. "Legal?" she said, then listened intently. "Understood." She hung up and met the detective's eyes. "Compliance confirms the notary number on this stamp does not exist in state records. They also reviewed an attempted electronic funds transfer last week using similar authorization. We rejected it then. Pattern suggests forgery." Barbara's hands tightened momentarily, then relaxed. The words settled over her like both a blanket and a weight. It meant she had been right all along. It also meant her son had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Another knock came at the door. The security officer opened it carefully. A man in work boots and a worn denim jacket stood behind him, his face tense with worry. "I'm Michael Wilson," he said. "My mother called, or the bank did. They said she needed me." Barbara stood before she realized she was moving. "Michael," she said, her voice breaking on his name. He crossed the small space in 2 steps and took her hands in his. He didn't embrace her immediately, seeming to sense her fragility. Instead, he held her hands like something both precious and strong. "Are you okay?" he asked, searching her face. "I am now," she repeated. Detective Washington explained the situation in concise, clear sentences. Michael listened, his expression shifting between concern and contained anger. When the detective finished, Michael nodded once. He looked at Olivia. "Thank you," he said. The words weighted with genuine gratitude. Through the glass, Joshua saw Michael and froze in mid-stride. His expression transformed rapidly, surprise to anger to a calculated smile. Amanda angled her body to whisper urgently in his ear. Joshua's hand lifted as if to push the door open. The security officer shifted his position slightly. Joshua's hand dropped. "We're going to bring them back in," Detective Washington said. "We'll keep voices level. We need clear answers on record." Joshua and Amanda returned to their seats. Joshua spoke first, his voice smooth. "Mom is confused. She mixes up dates and loses bills. We're helping." Detective Washington maintained his professional tone. "Mrs. Wilson, do you pay your own bills?" "Yes," Barbara said. "On the 1st and 15th of each month. I write checks and walk them to the mailbox myself." "Does anyone else have access to your online accounts?" "No." Washington turned to Joshua. "Mr. Wilson, why do you need power of attorney today?" Joshua spread his hands in a gesture of innocence. "To simplify things. She said she wanted help. I'm the one who shows up." Michael's jaw tightened, but he remained silent. Officer Chen looked up from her notes. "Who is Rick?" "The notary, friend of a friend," Amanda said quickly. "He's legitimate," Olivia spoke, her voice still calm. "Our legal department could not find his commission. The stamp number is not valid." "That is a crime in this state." Amanda maintained a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Maybe it's a typo." Detective Washington made notes without reacting. He continued asking for specific information: dates, times, locations. He asked who printed the forms, who brought them to Barbara's house, who handled her mail. He asked where Joshua had been the previous Thursday at 3:00 p.m. when the bank had blocked the earlier attempt to transfer money from Barbara's accounts. Joshua claimed he was at work. His eyes slid away from direct contact. Amanda said she couldn't remember where she'd been. Her heel tapped against the floor in a rapid, nervous rhythm. Outside the office, the bank continued its normal operations. A printer hummed. Someone laughed softly near the customer service desk. Inside, the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. Michael had remained quiet, observing. Now he spoke, his voice low but clear. "Joshua," he said, "you can tell the truth now, or you can tell it later with handcuffs on." Joshua's head snapped toward his brother. "You always thought you were better." Michael didn't rise to the bait. "No," he said simply. "I just work with my hands. That's all." The recorder captured Amanda's sharp intake of breath. She leaned toward Joshua. "Stop," she whispered urgently. "Just stop talking." Olivia's desk phone flashed again. She answered, listened briefly, then replaced the receiver. "The bank has placed a temporary hold on any changes to Mrs. Wilson's accounts pending the outcome of this investigation," she announced. "As of now, no funds will move, no titles will change. Nothing will be signed." Joshua's composure finally shattered. He pushed his chair back so forcefully it scraped against the floor. "You can't tell us what to do," he said, voice rising. "This is family business." Detective Washington stood. He didn't raise his voice. "Sit down, sir," he said. "Now." Joshua hesitated, then slowly lowered himself back into the chair. The room settled into an uneasy quiet. Olivia looked at Barbara. "Would you like a short break?" Barbara glanced down at her hands. They were steady. "No," she said. "I want this finished." Officer Chen nodded. "Then we'll do one more thing. We'll play back a portion of today's recording for the record. Then we'll step outside while Ms. Morgan retrieves some documents." She glanced at Olivia, who understood the unspoken request. Olivia pressed a button on the recorder. The room filled with Joshua's earlier whisper, "Don't make this messy. We have plans today." Then Amanda's voice, low and sharp. "Initials go fast when you don't overthink." The recording ended. No one spoke for several seconds. Detective Washington looked at Barbara. "We're almost done," he said gently. "Stay with me." Olivia stood and retrieved a slim folder from her drawer. She placed it on the table but didn't open it immediately. She looked at Barbara, then at Michael, then at the officers. "There's one more piece you should see," she said. "It will explain why nothing here could have harmed Mrs. Wilson today." Joshua's expression changed subtly. A flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. Amanda's fingers gripped the arms of her chair. Michael's hand found Barbara's and held it securely. The security officer checked the door latch one final time. The bank continued its operations outside. Inside the small office, the moment had arrived for the final truth to emerge. Olivia opened the slim folder. The pages inside were crisp, official-looking documents secured with a metal clip. She placed the top sheet on the table where everyone could see it. "This is a copy of a revocable living trust," she said, her voice steady. "It was executed and notarized 3 weeks ago. It lists Barbara Wilson as the grantor. It names Barbara and her older son, Michael Wilson, as co-trustees." She paused, letting the information settle in the room. Her home, savings accounts, and investments are already inside this trust. Joshua stared at the document as if it were written in a foreign language. "What does that even mean?" "It means," Olivia explained patiently, "that even if Mrs. Wilson had signed your power of attorney today, nothing would have moved. The trust controls her assets, not you." Amanda gave a short, sharp laugh. "You're bluffing." Olivia slid the second page across the table. It showed the date, the signatures, and the title transfer of Barbara's house into the trust's name. "We verified this with county records this morning," she said. "It is active and legally binding." Silence fell like a heavy blanket. Then Joshua spoke, his voice low and tight. "You did this behind my back." Barbara met his eyes directly. "I did this to protect myself." Joshua's expression transformed pride and confidence collapsing into panic and fury. "You think you're so clever," he said, voice rising. "You think you can make me look like a thief." Detective Washington shifted his weight, ready to intervene if needed. "No one is using that term," he said calmly. "We are simply describing actions." Amanda leaned forward, her voice suddenly sweet and concerned. "Barbara, we only wanted to help. You're tired. Bills are hard. We were trying to keep you safe." Barbara glanced at the fading bruise on her arm where Amanda had gripped her too tightly. She looked at the indentation the pen had left in her palm when Joshua had pressed it into her hand. She looked at Olivia, who met her gaze steadily. "Safe does not hurt," Barbara said quietly. Olivia turned the small recorder toward the center of the table. "For the record," she said, "this branch received a note that said help under duress. We observed a customer being pressured to sign legal documents. Legal has confirmed the notary stamp is invalid. We have video of physical coercion. We have audio of threats." Officer Chen looked up from her notepad. "Mr. Wilson, did you bring these documents into the bank today intending for your mother to sign them?" Joshua opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. His eyes darted toward the door, but there was nowhere to go. "Yes," he finally admitted. "Did you know the notary stamp might not be valid?" He hesitated. I trusted someone. I don't know notary stuff." "Who is someone?" Officer Chen pressed. Joshua rubbed his face with one hand. "A guy my friend knows," he muttered. "He said it was fine." Detective Washington nodded once, as if checking off a box on a mental list. He turned to Amanda. "Mrs. Wilson, did you apply pressure to Barbara's arm today?" Amanda's smile remained fixed. "I touched her so she wouldn't lose her place on the form." "We have video that shows excessive force," Washington said evenly. "We also have photos of the resulting bruise. Would you like to revise your statement?" Amanda's eyes went cold. "No." Olivia folded her hands on the table. "Barbara," she said softly, "you and I met 2 weeks ago. You asked questions about safety. You made a plan. Today, that plan worked. Barbara felt tears rise. This time, she didn't try to suppress them. They fell silently. "Thank you," she said simply. Michael squeezed his mother's hand. "You did this," he said with quiet pride. "You saved yourself." Outside the office, the bank continued its normal operations. Inside, the confrontation had reached its conclusion. The truth had been spoken. The evidence had been presented. What remained now were the consequences. Detective Washington stood. "Mr. and Mrs. Wilson," he said formally, "you are being detained for investigation into attempted financial exploitation and document forgery. You will come with us now." Joshua pushed back from the table again, but the fight seemed to have drained from him. His chair bumped against the wall and stopped. He looked at Barbara with an expression of betrayal. "Mom," he said, his voice breaking, "don't let them do this. Please." Barbara's throat ached with conflicting emotions. She loved her son. She also loved the truth. Both were real. Both mattered. "I am your mother," she said steadily. "I am not your ATM." Amanda stood without looking at anyone. "I want a lawyer," she said flatly. "Right now. You can request one at the station," Detective Washington replied. He nodded to the security officer and Officer Chen. They moved to escort Joshua and Amanda from the office. As they reached the door, Joshua turned back. "This isn't over," he said. Not quite a threat, but not quite a plea either. Barbara met his gaze. "Yes," she said quietly. "It is." The door closed with a soft click that somehow felt final. The recorder light went dark. The white noise machine hummed its steady, comforting rhythm. Barbara sat very still. Then the tears came in earnest, quiet, but steady. Michael pulled his chair closer and placed an arm around her shoulders. He didn't say it was okay. He didn't make promises he couldn't keep. He simply held her while she cried. Olivia brought a box of tissues from the shelf and set it within reach. "We'll file our reports," she said gently. "We'll preserve all recordings and video. We'll provide them to the police. We'll place alerts on your accounts so any unusual activity is immediately flagged." Barbara nodded, dabbing at her eyes. "I want to press charges," she said. The words were heavy but necessary. "I will not be silent about this." "You don't have to be," Olivia assured her. A soft tap sounded at the glass. Tanya stood there with fresh cups of water. She set them inside the door and gave Barbara a small, encouraging smile. Barbara smiled back a fragile expression, but genuine. It felt like the first time her face had moved that way all day without effort. Detective Washington returned after Joshua and Amanda had been escorted to patrol cars. "They're on their way to the station," he informed them. "We'll be in touch about formal statements and next steps." He handed Barbara a business card. "If they contact you in any way, call this number immediately. If anyone shows up at your house, call 911. We'll arrange for extra patrol checks in your neighborhood for the next few days." "Thank you," Barbara said. "Do you have a safe place to stay tonight?" he asked. "Home," Michael answered before Barbara could speak. "With me there. I'll change the locks today." Washington nodded. "Good. She shouldn't be alone right now." After the detective left, Olivia gathered the copies and trust documents and placed them in a neat stack for Barbara to take. "Do you want me to walk you out?" she offered. "Yes, please," Barbara said. They moved through the lobby together. Other customers glanced up briefly, then looked away kindly, pretending not to notice Barbara's tear-streaked face. At the door, the security officer unlocked the entrance and held it open. Sunlight touched Barbara's face as she stepped outside. The air felt different, somehow cleaner, fresher. Michael guided her to his truck parked beside Joshua's abandoned SUV. "The police will probably impound it," he said, noticing her gaze. "Part of the investigation." Barbara nodded, not trusting herself to speak yet. The events of the morning had left her drained but strangely light, as if a weight she'd carried for weeks had been lifted. Michael drove carefully, one hand occasionally reaching across to pat her arm reassuringly. They didn't speak much on the journey home. Some experiences required silence to process. At the house, Michael took out his toolbox and went to work on the front door lock while Barbara made tea. The kettle's familiar whistle provided a comforting normalcy in a day that had been anything but ordinary. Later, as they sat at the kitchen table, the same table where the day had begun with her small list, Barbara finally found words for the tumult of emotions inside her. "I never thought it would come to this," she said. "My own son," Michael nodded. "People change, or maybe they show who they always were, given the right circumstances." "Was it the money? Was that all it was?" Michael sighed. "Probably not just that. Joshua always felt he had something to prove. Always competing, always wanting to appear successful. Amanda encouraged that side of him." "I failed him somehow," Barbara whispered. "No," Michael said firmly. "He made his choices. Adults do that. It's not on you." Barbara stared into her tea. "What happens now?" "Legally, they'll probably face charges. Financial exploitation of the elderly is a serious offense in this state. The forged documents make it worse." "I meant with us. Our family." Michael was quiet for a moment. "That's up to you, Mom, and to Joshua, I suppose, if he's willing to get help, to make amends." "Would you forgive him?" she asked. "Eventually, maybe, but I wouldn't trust him with your finances again. That's different from forgiveness." Barbara nodded slowly. Trust had to be earned. Some boundaries, once established, needed to remain firm. As evening approached, Michael installed a small security camera above the front porch. He helped Barbara change passwords on her accounts and email. They made a list together: new phone number, mail delivery directly to the post office, no unannounced visits. Small steps toward rebuilding safety. Small ways to take back control. That night, Barbara sat alone in her garden as twilight deepened. The roses Robert had planted years ago released their fragrance into the cooling air. A neighbor walked by with a small dog and waved. Barbara waved back, the simple gesture somehow affirming her place in the world. She thought about the word that had started the day routine. How deceptive that word had been. Today had not been routine. Today had been a choice, a stand, a declaration of worth. Inside, Michael was on the phone with Eleanor, updating her on the day's events. Tomorrow would bring police statements, possible legal proceedings, difficult conversations. But tonight, in the gathering darkness, Barbara allowed herself to simply breathe. The house behind her was quiet, but not empty. It was hers. It would remain hers. She had made sure of that. The phone rang at 7:15 the next morning. Barbara, already awake and making coffee, answered on the second ring. "Mrs. Wilson, this is Officer Chen from yesterday. I'm calling to update you on the situation." Barbara sat down at the kitchen table. "Yes, Joshua and Amanda Wilson were released on bail this morning. They're prohibited from contacting you as a condition of their release. If they attempt to call, visit, or communicate in any way, please contact us immediately." "I understand," Barbara said, her voice steady. "What happens next?" "The district attorney is reviewing the case. Given the evidence, the recordings, the fraudulent documents, the attempted transfer, they'll likely file formal charges within the week. You'll need to provide a detailed statement, but we can do that at your home if that's more comfortable." "Yes, please. My son Michael is here." "Good. Detective Washington and I can come by this afternoon around 2 if that works for you." "We'll be here." After hanging up, Barbara stared at the phone. Less than 24 hours ago, she had been preparing to face Joshua and Amanda at the bank. Now they were facing criminal charges. The speed of events left her slightly dizzy. Michael came downstairs, hair still damp from the shower. "Who called Officer Chen?" "Joshua and Amanda are out on bail but can't contact me. The police are coming at 2 for my statement." He nodded, pouring himself coffee. "I called work. Took the rest of the week off. You don't need to stay that long." "I want to," he interrupted gently. "Besides, there's a lot to do. Security system, phone changes, legal follow-up." Barbara sipped her coffee. "I keep thinking about what Joshua said yesterday, that it's not over." Michael's expression hardened. He was lashing out, but if he tries anything, he'll violate bail and go straight back to jail. "It's not that," Barbara said slowly. "I'm worried about him, about what he might do next." Before Michael could respond, the doorbell rang. He tensed immediately. "Stay here," he said, moving to the front window. He peeked through the curtain, then relaxed slightly. "It's Eleanor." Barbara's oldest friend stood on the porch, a canvas bag in one hand and a determined expression on her face. When Michael opened the door, she marched in without ceremony. "I would have come yesterday," she said, embracing Barbara tightly. "But I thought you needed space. Now I'm here, and I'm not leaving until I'm convinced you're all right." Barbara felt tears sting her eyes again. "I'm okay, really." Eleanor held her at arm's length, assessing. "You're better than I expected. Actually, Michael filled me in last night. You were incredibly brave." "Not brave," Barbara said. "Just desperate." "Sometimes they're the same thing," Eleanor replied. She began unpacking her bag fresh muffins, a casserole for later, and several folders of documents. "I've been researching elder law since this began. The case against Joshua and Amanda is strong, especially with the attempted electronic transfer." "I don't want them to go to prison," Barbara said quietly. Eleanor and Michael exchanged glances. "That's for the courts to decide, Mom," Michael said gently. "But financial crimes against seniors carry serious penalties. They might be offered a plea deal," Eleanor added. "Probation, restitution, mandatory counseling. But that's not something you control." Barbara nodded, understanding but not entirely accepting. Despite everything, Joshua was still her son. The thought of him in prison made her physically ill. The doorbell rang again. This time, Michael checked the newly installed security camera feed on his phone. "It's Amanda," he said, disbelief coloring his voice. "Alone," Eleanor straightened. "She's violating the no-contact order. Call the police." "Wait," Barbara said. "Let me see her." "Mom." "No," Michael protested. "It's not safe." "We can talk through the door," Barbara insisted. "I want to hear what she has to say." Michael looked to Eleanor, who shrugged helplessly. "It's her decision," she said. "But I'm recording this conversation." She pulled out her phone and activated the voice recorder. Barbara approached the front door. Through the decorative glass panel, she could see Amanda's distorted figure standing on the porch. She looked smaller somehow, less polished than usual. "What do you want, Amanda?" Barbara called through the door. "You're not supposed to be here." "I know." Amanda's voice came back, subdued. I need to talk to you. Just once." "We're recording this," Michael called. "And we've already called the police." A lie, but a strategic one. Barbara didn't contradict him. "That's fine," Amanda said. "I deserve that. Barbara, I'm sorry. I really am. This wasn't supposed to happen like this." "What wasn't?" Barbara asked. "The part where you tried to take everything I own. Or the part where you got caught." A pause. "Both, I guess." Barbara felt Michael's hand on her shoulder steady, supportive. "Joshua doesn't know I'm here," Amanda continued. "We're staying at a hotel. He's not handling this well." "That's not our problem," Michael said flatly. "I know. But I wanted you to know that I'm cooperating with the police. I've given them information about the fake notary, about the transfer attempt. Everything." Barbara frowned. "Why would you do that?" Another pause. "Because I didn't realize how far things had gone until yesterday. Seeing it all laid out like that, the recordings, the bruises, I didn't recognize myself." "You're trying to save yourself," Michael said skeptically. "Yes," Amanda admitted. "But also, I was wrong. We were wrong. What we did to you. Barbara, I can't justify it. Not to the police, not to myself." Barbara leaned against the door frame. "What about Joshua? He still thinks we can fix this. Make it go away. He doesn't understand what we've done." A patrol car turned onto the street, moving slowly toward the house. "You should go," Barbara said. "The real police are coming now." "Just tell me one thing," Amanda said hurriedly. "The trust? How long have you known what we were doing?" "Long enough," Barbara replied. "Since I heard you in the driveway talking about my money as if it was already yours." Amanda made a small sound, almost a laugh, but without humor. "We thought we were so careful. You outsmarted us both. No, Barbara corrected. I just protected myself, like any person would. The patrol car stopped in front of the house. An officer stepped out, hand near his holster. Goodbye, Amanda, Barbara said, stepping back from the door. Goodbye, Barbara. For what it's worth, I am sorry. Through the glass, Barbara watched as the officer approached Amanda. There was a brief conversation. Amanda showed him something on her phone, probably bail paperwork. He escorted her to her car and watched as she drove away. When the patrol car had followed Amanda's vehicle out of sight, Barbara finally moved away from the door. Do you believe her? Michael asked. Barbara considered the question. I believe she's sorry they got caught. I believe she's trying to minimize her own legal trouble. But genuine remorse, I don't know. Eleanor put her phone away. People can surprise you for better or worse. The important thing is that you don't need to figure this out today. Or ever. If you don't want to. Barbara nodded slowly. One day at a time. Exactly, Eleanor said firmly. Now, who wants muffins? The rest of the morning passed quietly. Barbara found herself moving between moments of relief and waves of grief. Relief at having protected herself. Grief for the relationship with her son that might never be the same. Michael and Eleanor provided steady companionship without pressuring her to talk. At 2:00, Detective Washington and Officer Chen arrived for her formal statement. They sat at the dining room table, recording devices ready. Take your time, Washington advised. Start from when you first noticed concerning behavior. Barbara began slowly, then found her rhythm. She described the opened mail, the overheard conversation, the increasing pressure. She detailed her preventative measures, the trust, the recorder, the bank protocol. She explained her feelings throughout confusion, hurt, determination. Officer Chen took meticulous notes while Washington occasionally asked clarifying questions. When Barbara finished, nearly an hour had passed. That's a comprehensive statement, Washington said approvingly. You've done everything right in a very difficult situation. What about Amanda? Barbara asked. She came by this morning. Washington frowned. That violates her bail conditions. We'll need to report that. She said she's cooperating with the investigation. She has provided some information, Chen confirmed.